Alright. Go ahead and pick your own corner to the camper. I don't know if you remember, but I see you a few days ago. We did the Pals Camp song, so we're going to do it again, and I hope this time when we sing it, the song has a lot more meaning than it did a few days ago. Alright, count 3. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, we're from Pals Boys Camp and we know the trails to the tops of meadows green. We hiked across the clear running stream to a world that seems like a dream. Though the trails be long and steep, we know at the end we'll rest our feet and sit and enjoy the glow of friendship.
All right. I want to share with you guys, and this is a very awesome song, and sometimes I sit and I wonder why I keep coming back to camp, because as you get older it's a lot harder to hold something. One of the very moment right here, looking up at the sky, so you see millions and millions of stars, and it's just a really awesome feeling. But right now we have a very special story from one of the staff members that you don't see very often, and I don't want to give too much away, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it to McFly, so make sure you guys pay attention.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, God will ask me to come down and share the story with you, and I'm sometimes hesitant to tell the story because it usually has a lot of, it can get a little odd sometimes, it get a little weird, but you know, I've been told it in a couple summers and whatnot, and you know, so I figured it's probably alright, and you guys, you know, everybody seems to enjoy it when I tell the story, so you know there's a lot of strange things that go along with it. It's going to be a little bit of a long story. It's probably one of the longer stories you're going to hear at Pals Camp, so make sure you guys are comfortable. And you're in a situation where when I start telling you, you're not going to be, you know, leaning on each other or falling asleep on each other and that kind of stuff. So counselors help me out. Make sure everybody's in a comfortable spot. If comfortable means you're close together, and that's great. If comfortable means you need a little space, then sort it out. Once I start telling the story, I'd like to be able to get through. So like I said, it's pretty long, and I want you guys to be able to get the full story and whatnot. As Goblin said, my name is McFly. I'm the outreach coordinator for Pals Camp. One of the jobs that I do, you guys will hopefully get to know me more as the week goes along. All the stuff we do during the winter time, it's my job to organize that. So all the pizza parties and reunions and, you know, football games or whatever else we're able to do during the year, camp outs and stuff like that, it's my job to organize. So, and I also am the one who picks the Lioneers and the Voyagers to come back. So from those of you guys who have been recommended by your counselors to come back and do another year here, and those of you who write me and keep in contact and all that kind of stuff, that's sort of what I do. So it's kind of why you don't see me, is I'm kind of, when, you know, Beaver's the director, and when he's off, I'm on. But he's the director, and my job sort of is all during the wintertime, so you guys will hopefully get to know me a lot better. I also, a bit of an academic. I have my master's from the University of Edinburgh. I have a degree in literature and in linguistics, and part of what I did for my research and whatnot when I was in college, an undergraduate, and it's what sort of led me, even though it wasn't exactly what I ended up studying. I ended up doing medieval studies and focusing on Viking and Scandinavian literature and language. So it's not exactly what I was doing, but it was one of the things going through college that early on sort of led me in the direction of kind of anthropology and being an archaeologist, which is sort of my main focus. That's what I do. I'm a medieval archaeologist. One of the classes that I took in anthropology, actually, was on Native American communities. And one of the projects we had was to do a research project on a Native American tribe. I decided I wanted to do something local, something in California, and I'd heard the name before of this Indian tribe called the Tabatelabal Indians. And I was interested in them. I had heard that they sometimes were down in the Kern, in Kern County, down in Bakersfield. How many of you guys are from Bakersfield? Anybody here? Counselors, don't be afraid. You guys can raise your hands. Don't be embarrassed. It's all right. That's where I live right now, is Bakersfield as well. And so I wanted to do something that was a little local, so I chose them. And in my research, going through the libraries and stuff like that, and online and the archives and whatnot, I realized that there weren't any more. There were like one or two living members of the Tabatelabal tribe left. Excuse me, my contacts got something in it. Of the Tabatelabal tribe, and they were kind of a weird. They're kind of a weird people. They were even within the Native American, community in North America. They were odd. Their language wasn't close to because Sioux, Apache, all those Comanche, all those different languages of the different North American Indian tribes were very similar. But their language was a lot more similar to the Aztecs. Actually, they had a lot in common with their culture and with their language with the Aztecs, and not so much with the surrounding areas. So it wasn't easy to study the other tribes around them, like some of my colleagues were doing. My peers were studying the other tribes around them and getting information about what their tribe was like because of the interactions and what the other tribes were saying about them. They kind of kept to themselves, and like I said, they were kind of really different. They really prided themselves on their warrior abilities, their abilities as the braves and the hunters and all that kind of stuff. But I did find out that there was a man who lived sort of north of Porterville, up in the mountains up there, who had, back in the day, he was very old. He was in his 70s or 80s or something like that, and this is 8 years ago or so. And I heard about him as his name was Brown. And I don't rightly remember what his first name was, but his last name was Brown. So I heard that, and I guess he had dealings with the sort of remnants, the last couple, stragglers that were hanging on from the Tabatelabal tribe, and he was the best person to go to, apparently. People had done some articles and some research on him and written about him, and his name kept coming up, and I figured, Porterville's hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, something like that from Bakersfield, so I'll just go up in the mountains and, see about talking to this guy. And so, I went up and I tried to put a call in, sent him a letter, didn't hear anything back, so I figured I'd just go talk to this guy. And, I kind of came up, and there was this old cabin in the woods at the end of this dirt road and whatnot. Nice little place, very much like a sort of outdoorsman's home. And I came up and I, said, excuse me, hello, and the door opened, and this man came out, big, huge. I mean, even in his 80s, you can see that this guy was just this massive guy, beard and everything like that. Just looked like what you guys would think of as a mountain man. And so I walked up and introduced myself, and I said, Mr. Brown, I'd like to ask you some questions, if it's okay, about the Tabatelabal Indians. They're sort of dying out, and there's not a lot about them, and I want to know about them. Would you mind telling me about it? And he says, don't call me Mr. Brown, call me Bear. Everybody calls me Bear Brown. I said, all right, it's nice to meet you, Bear. And so I sat down, and he started telling me these stories about the Native Americans. And he started out and he said, I'll tell you, rather than telling you everything about the tribe, I'll start off by telling you that the Tabatelabal Indians migrated. Okay, they live mainly in the mountains in the summer. That's where they got most of their food and everything like that for the winter. All the stuff they would store, the animals they would hunt, and then dry, and then they would move down this down the river or whatever, into the Kern River Valley, and they'd go out sort of in the Bakersfield, and they'd spend the colder winter months down there instead of being up in the mountains. But they had this area in the mountains that was perfect, with everything that they could need. It had, water and wildlife and acorns and, everything that you could possibly think of that you would need to keep a tribe of Indians supplied. Everything. It was fish, you name it. And they had this one chief, and we actually, if you guys know the Sequoias, that's what it's called, the Sequoia National Forest, is named after this great Tabatelbal chief, who was called Chief Sequoia. And he said, so what I'm going to do is, knowing that about the Tabatelbal Indians, I'm going to tell you about probably one of the greatest and also the darkest times in the Tabatelbal Indian history. I'm going to tell you about the reign of Chief Sequoia. Chief Sequoia was the greatest chief that the Tabatelbal Indians ever had. He was wise. When he was younger, he was an amazing hunter. He was a great leader. And under his rule, his people prospered. Okay? They grew. They weren't afraid of any of the other Indian tribes. They didn't have to worry about sharing their territory. And the numbers of their people grew bigger, okay, under his rule. Now, Chief Sequoia was expecting a daughter, or expecting a child. His wife was with child. And, the whole tribe was just very, very excited, giving her all this love and attention, and just, their chief, their beloved chief, was going to have a baby. There was going to be an heir to, to his reign. At the same time, there was also another Indian woman in the tribe, and something's wrong with this woman. Was off. She was not altogether there. She's a little crazy, and even though they allowed her to kind of stay around, she didn't really fit in. She would talk about things, and she said she would see these signs, and all this different kind of stuff, and just would upset people. She's very talking to herself and whatnot. So they kind of shunned her a little bit. One of the things that finally was the last straw that they just really realized that she was crazy is that she said she went out into the woods one day and she was gathering berries. And while she was out there gathering, she said she saw a white wolf. She looked up, and in between the trees, there was this white shape. And it came closer and closer and closer, and it materialized out of the mist, and it was this big, big white wolf. Okay, and the way she described it is that from its paws to its shoulders, it stood about this high. Okay, and it was just pure white. Running back to a white wolf, it's a white wolf, it's a white wolf. And when she tried to tell everybody knew she was crazy. Because even though there were still wolves here in this area, in Sequoia, back in those days, they never got to be that big. I mean, we're talking, they're big dogs, they're big wolves, that big, but never that big. That's a huge thing. Also, you guys know, hopefully, with biology and stuff like that, natural selection, whatever, if you're not able to camouflage yourself, especially if you're a hunter, you can't hunt prey, right? So if you can't blend in with your surroundings, you can't sneak up on, deer or rabbits or anything like that. So a white wolf up here at that time of year in the summertime, in the Sequoia, because obviously you guys look around, there's not a whole lot of snow up here, right? And that goes way, way far north. Okay, there's not a lot of snow, so a white wolf wouldn't be able to survive in this area, and so they basically were like, well, there are no, in these mountains, there's no white wolves, so this lady's crazy, and they kind of just shunned her. That was kind of the last straw. Well, she was pregnant with her child, and nobody knew who the father was. She said that there was no father, and so she kind of was out by herself, kind of outside the tribe. The day came that Chief Sequoia's wife went into labor, and she was giving birth to their child, their first child. And when she was born, Chief Sequoia walked out of his wigwam or whatever. And in those days, for that tribe, their tradition was the first thing that they would hear or see that made an impression on them, that they noticed when they left the tent, would be the child's name. And one of the things in the area that this area had, where they would settle during the summer, were these twin clear running streams. Okay, and when Chief Sequoyah stepped out of his wigwam, the first thing that he heard was the soft, delicate babble of this running water that went right by where he lived. And it was the lifeblood of their camp. It was what made the whole area that they were in, as beautiful and as abundant as it was. Okay? And so he named his daughter, his first child, Running Water. At the same time that his wife was giving birth, the lady, the Indian squaw, was giving birth to her child. And when she finished, she opened her eyes after the pain, and the first thing that she saw, what do you think it was?
A white wolf.
It was a white wolf who had been watching her while she had given birth, and that was the first thing that she saw. And she gave birth to a baby boy, and so she called him White Wolf. And it was a reminder to herself, that she wasn't crazy, and it was a reminder to everybody else in the tribe that her son was going to be a great warrior, was going to be like that white wolf. And as they grew up, Running Water and White Wolf couldn't have been more different in their personalities. Obviously boy and girl, but couldn't have been more different. The entire tribe loved Running Water. She was beautiful. From a very early age, she would talk to people and listen, and she cared, and she would help. And she gave her heart to every single person in the tribe, and they all loved her for it. White Wolf, on the other hand, grew to be big and strong, more and more and more. But there was something wrong with him. There was something off about him. He was mean, and he was aggressive, and he would fight the other boys. And it wasn't good enough to be the best. He wanted to make everybody else feel inferior to him. He wanted to make sure everybody knew that they weren't as good as he was. So when he got to be the age where a boy becomes a man and goes from being just an Indian boy to being a hunter, they started testing. The older hunters started testing the younger boys to see if they had what it took to be a warrior. And in all the trials and all the battles and everything that they would do, White Wolf was the greatest warrior. He was the greatest hunter. He would ride out on his horse, and he'd come back by himself with a mountain lion over the back of his horse that he killed with his own hands. And he'd ride into the middle of camp, and he'd fling the mountain lion down, and he'd say, "See, I am the greatest warrior that this tribe has ever seen. I'm better than anybody else here, and I deserve to be first, because I am best." And Chief Sequoyah told him, "You will not be best until you realize that as great as you think you are, and as great as you might be, you need to be a part of this tribe, not a part from it." And it's a lesson that White Wolf could never learn. So as he got older and older, and he saw more and more of the lesser boys made hunters, made warriors, and he still was not given that honor, it ate at him. It destroyed him. It tore him up from the inside, and it turned his heart black. And became even more and more cruel, rather than learning his lesson and becoming better. Unfortunately, at the same time that all this was going on, White Wolf was also falling in love with Running Water. Okay, he thought that he should have her because she was the greatest warrior, and she was the most beautiful Indian woman in the tribe. But obviously, somebody like him was never going to get her hand, because her father, Chief Sequoyah, was never going to give her to him, was never going to allow that to happen. So no matter how much he thought he deserved it, that was one more thing that ate at him from the inside. One day, White Wolf was out hunting with two other hunters, two other boys, younger than he was. And as they're hunting this deer, they're tracking it and hunting it, White Wolf wanted to be the one to kill that deer and bring it back by himself. And they got into an argument, all three of them, over who was going to take the killing blow on that deer. And White Wolf almost killed both of these two young Indians. So when he came back into camp by himself, with a deer slung over his shoulder, and they asked him where the other two were, he said, I don't know. I didn't need them. They were slowing me down. And he dropped the deer. Well, when they brought the other two boys in, and Chief Sequoia saw what White Wolf had done, he finally said, that's enough. You are not part of this tribe anymore. Leave. I'm banishing you from this tribe. You're no longer a part of the Tabatelbal tribe. You will never be a warrior for us. And White Wolf said, I don't need you to make me a warrior. I've made myself a warrior. I don't need you. I don't need anybody else in this tribe. I will make my own tribe. I will be my own tribe. And he left. Those words were worrying for a lot of the people of the tribe, and especially Chief Sequoia, because they knew how he felt about Running Water. One day, Running Water went, like she usually did, with the women down to the creek to pick berries. Because later on in the summer, a lot of the areas up in the Sequoias have blackberries and all kinds of other stuff. And many bushes will produce like the little green fruits that were on it. They'll turn red and they get sweet instead of being bitter. And they'll harvest them because they can dry them out and take them down with them during the winter, and it keeps them alive until the next summer. And Running Water was off, and she was down, and they were all talking and chattering, and she was laughing, and picking these berries, and they're spreading out, and she found this bush, and she was picking berries from this bush. And all of a sudden, White Wolf, who'd been hunched down behind the berry bush waiting, had snuck up on the other side, leapt out and snatched up Running Water, threw him over his shoulder, and ran off. All the Indian women heard was a scuffle and then nothing. They turned, and just as they turned, they saw just the littlest glimpse of White Wolf fleeing into the forest. And they screamed and they panicked and they ran back to the village. And they told Chief Sequoia, Running Water, and they were running back and panicked, and finally got it out of one of them. Chief Sequoia, Running Water has been taken by White Wolf. White Wolf took Running Water. He kidnapped her. And Chief Sequoia said, where did he go? Which direction did he go? And they said, east. Chief Sequoia knew. In the area where they were surrounded by peaks. Okay, by four major peaks. But on the east side of the area, there were caves in the mountainside. It was rocky, and there were caves. And so Chief Sequoia knew. He knew where White Wolf was taking her. White Wolf was taking his daughters to the caves east of their village. And so the first thing that he did was grab his two strongest lieutenants, okay, the two warriors, the two hunters that were closest to him in ability and strength and power. And he said, get our horses. And they all ran, and they got to the horses and jumped on their horses and took off after White Wolf. And White Wolf had tied Running Water up to the back of his horse like he had that cougar, that mountain lion. He had it with him, he was cruel. He